Okay, so we're back in the saddle here. What is happening here is we're actually going to be passing through a number of small little rock cuts. You can see one right up here. So to continue our story about Canadian Northern and the construction of this line, unfortunately, Canadian Northern was, more fortunately, they were forced to build this line. And again, construction happened between 1911 and 1914. Here you can see some of that efforts of that construction. You can see this little rock cut that we have here. Not particularly high, maybe 5 or 6 feet at the most. And so the construction was completed on New Year's Day 1914. That was when the last spike was driven, and the line opened for traffic in 1950. Now unfortunately, Canadian Northern began running into financial difficulties during that period, due in part to some of the enormous construction costs from this specific area, and as well as building through the mountains of British Columbia, and as well as some of the issues arising from World War I. And so by 1917, the company was in some really severe financial trouble and actually had to be taken over by the Canadian government. And a year later, in 1918, the railway was amalgamated or merged, or however you want to word it. We do have another small little rock cut here on the south side. They were merged with another bunch of Canadian government-owned bankrupt rail lines known as the Canadian Government Railways. And that merger formed Canadian National Railways. And that merger process was eventually completed in 1923 with the absorption of the Grand Trunk lines. And so the name of this line changed. It had been the Nipigon Subdivision of Canadian Northern Railway and then Canadian National Railways. And then in 1923, again, you can see the continuation here of this little rock cut. In 1923, the name was changed to the Dorion Subdivision of Canadian National. And that name continued right up until 1960, when Canadian National, in 1960, Canadian National changed its name, dropped the railways, plural, and adopted kind of the CN moniker with the worm logo, as they call it. The Dorion subdivision was merged with the more easterly Kinghorn subdivision, and so the entire line became the Kinghorn subdivision. Kind of neat little here, you kind of see some homes here, and actually one of these homes here, they do have one of the old City of Thunder Bay Brill buses. So that's kind of neat to see in somebody's front yard. And so the line continued as the Kinghorn. Unfortunately, in the 1920s, this line had been relegated to secondary status with the construction of the Nakina Cutoff. And so this line was basically kept around by Canadian National as a redundancy in case of issues with the main line. And that unfortunately came to an end in 2005 when CN decided to discontinue service on this line, again going through a small little rock cut here. And so service was terminated in 2005, and beginning in 2008, you can see here there's a tie. Beginning in 2008, they began pulling up the rails on the line, and that process was completed by 2010. All right, so we're just going to plug along a little bit further here. There's something that's just up here, and then we're gonna pause for a minute. So again, just a bunch of small little rock cuts as we go through here. Here's a culvert. No culvert markers on this section of rail line. Very unusual. I think there's one right at the end, but I couldn't read it. Again, those are just sort of hit and miss. Like some areas you see them and they're all kind of easy to read and legible. Here again, more rock cut. And some areas they're gone. So what we have here is we actually have an old road crossing, and so you can actually see there's a gate here from the road. There's a bunch of rocks that have been thrown in the road. I believe this is the old Mackenzie Station Road. Here you can kind of see the old part of the road, and as an indicator of that, we actually have the old private crossing sign that's there. I don't know when this road was rejiggled, because Mackenzie Station Road is actually in a different spot now. But eventually the road used to kind of come all the way down here. But obviously that was all moved, and I want to say probably sometime in the 70s or the 80s, but maybe somebody will let me know in the comments. All right, so what we'll do is we'll pause here for a second, and then we'll just continue making our way to the west here. All right, so we're backpedaling here and just going to be passing through yet another little rock cut. So as you can see that maybe it's 4 feet on the south side, a little bit higher on the north side, maybe 5 feet. Again, not particularly high, not particularly long. It's kind of petering out here. You can see sort of the nature of the grade in this area. Very, very straight. A gust of wind here. Hopefully you can hear me. Somebody here is doing some work on their home. Big slabs of stone and such lying in their driveway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip you ahead a little bit. There's a couple small little rock cuts we're going to pass through, but I'll push you ahead to our next point of interest. All right, so as we come alongside this kind of little open area here, little swampy area, we have our next stopping point. And here you can see the beaver's been at work, and we will see more evidence of that very, very shortly. And so our stopping point is right up here. And so what we have here is we actually have a concrete culvert that runs under the grade. Again, no milepost marker, but you can hear kind of the water running, and the culvert is just down over there. So we'll work our way down and go take a look at what's going on. All right, so we've made our way down here below the grade on the north side. You can see this little creek here that's kind of flowing from the north down to the south around towards Lake Superior. And so what we have here is a fairly large diameter concrete culvert. We're going to try to sneak our way in a little bit closer here. We have to be careful because there is an old farmer's fence that's right here. That's kind of in the way, but we can get a little bit closer here. So it's probably about a 5-foot diameter culvert. And so if we sneak our way in a little bit closer, you can see the culvert itself is in pretty good shape. There seems to be a little bit of a deformation down there on the south side, but this end looks like it's in pretty good shape. There's a little bit of water coming through the culvert. We have had a little bit of rain in the last kind of couple of weeks. It was a pretty dry summer, and you can see the water's kind of all muddy and everything like that, and that's because of the rain that we had last weekend. So anyway, we're gonna jump the grade and go take a look at things on the south side. All right, so we're down here on the south side. You can see the water here is much deeper, so it's a little bit more challenging to get closer. You can see the opening for the culvert here, the downstream end, because the non-flanged end. Try to get our way over here. You'll notice that the beaver has been busy. It's been a lot of trees that are cut down, and we're gonna see a little bit more of the beaver's handiwork very shortly. All right, so let's take a look at the inside here. So I did mention on the other side that it seemed like there was a bit of a deformation, a little bit of deterioration on this side. You can actually see what they've done is they've inserted some corrugated metal bands and kind of bolted them into place. I think in part to kind of hold the segments of the concrete culvert together, and also to kind of shore up the joints here. So you can see there is a little bit of a bend or a little bit of a twist here on this side. Anyway, so what we'll do is we'll make our way back up to the grade and just continue pushing our way to the west.